Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the BamaPreps podcast. I'm, as always, your host, Vlad Valasiuk, and I'm joined today by a new co-host. Our good friend Mason was not able to return for another year of high school football, so we have the wonderful TP Hammock joining us for this year and hopefully many more years. TP has been helping me out with Bama Preps for, I'd say, a good 4 to 5 months now. He is very knowledgeable about high school football in Alabama, a former St. James Trojan himself. St. James running that wishbone now. We'll get into that later, but this is episode 12, and I'm going to let TP introduce himself. Then I'm also going to talk about where the heck have we been with this podcast. But hey, TP, welcome aboard. How we doing, man?
Doing great, Vlad. I appreciate all the kind words. It's my honor to be on here. I follow high school football like a maniac, like a lot of football. I follow it very closely. For those unaware, my name is TP Hammock. You probably see me in the comment sections. There's probably some of you who have chirped at me for my picks so far. I love that, and whenever I'm wrong, I certainly don't love that. But and I am wrong. I am wrong. You can do as much research in the world, but you can still be wrong in Alabama high school football. I help the Alabama High School Football Historical Society with their podcast. I help them out with a lot of things as well. If you're a player, I'm sure you probably have been on there. If you haven't, it's a great use of resource, and you can learn a lot about your school and other schools around you. So it's a great resource. But I'm here today to represent Bama Preps, and
That's it, baby.
if you've
That's
ever
it.
listened, I'm about to say if you ever listen to that podcast with me on it, it's kind of a little bit more slower, a little bit more educational. This is not going to be that. This is going to be like two guys sitting on the porch talking about,
That's
talking
it.
about what
Yep.
games happened, and if you're a player, talking about how you can't, if you had a good week, you don't want to look forward to film because you messed up a block or you messed up something. You're like, oh, it's like that one play. Coach is going to get so mad at me,
That's
and then
it.
you know
That's
what
it.
happens? Either two things happen. He does get mad at you, coach does, or he doesn't even notice it and you worried for nothing. It happens to all of us. I
W-
promise it happens to all of us. But
Well,
Vlad,
if
thank
your
you so much for
coach Yeah, if your coach, and I appreciate it, TP, but if your coach doesn't notice it, then you might not be playing next week because he probably saw it and said this kid's a lost hope. That happened to yours truly a few times, and I had to, lock in on scout team, if you will, but it's a story for another day. Where the heck have we been? That's a good question. We actually wanted to record at the start of the season. Schedules didn't line up. I also have this thing to where I'll forget sometimes. I don't like that about myself, but it happens. But we're gonna be hopefully recording weekly,
yeah.
bi-weekly. We don't have a massive script or anything, so we're recording a podcast in America. We've got it pretty good, I'd say. But
Oh
anyways,
yeah, absolutely. Well,
before
we're going to do a lot of good things. We'll be way more active in the podcast game. Me and Vlad, we like to record these, and we basically talk almost every single night anyway. So why not
yeah.
record? So
Yeah, some of my favorite things to do is, I'll get home Friday night from a game and me and TP will get on and we'll watch some random 1A game. Like we'll be sitting watching Fruitdale and Marengo.
Oh yeah,
For
baby. Yeah, if you're a pirate fan, give us
Shout
give
out
us a message.
Fruitdale.
All right.
Shout
Yeah,
out
big
Fruitdale.
fan of the Pirates. Big things are coming there.
Things, absolutely. And yeah, we like looking at, these 1As, all the different offenses and everything. And that sort of brings us to, a season synopsis pretty much, what's gone on in high school football in Alabama this year. So what are some of the big games that have happened while we've been away? We'll also get into, this week's big games, Auburn Opelika, Hoover Hillcrest, and then obviously we have to talk about Mackenzie and Elba, and the highest scoring game in Alabama high school football history. Pretty crazy that that's happened in the year of our Lord 2024. But anyways, let's get into our season synopsis. 7A, we'll start off with them. We'll go top down, and actually I want to use the AHS FHS rankings. And a big shout out to those guys. I know you mentioned them earlier, but David Parker is a Amazing, amazing man. And you need to go on there and you need to look up your team because every single team is on there. Every single team, every single high school team that has ever existed in the state of Alabama. It is absolutely amazing. From Thompson to the Alabama School of the Deaf to, everybody. Everybody is on there, all the scores. But let's jump into 7A. And I'd say the consensus number one right now in Class 7A is Central Phoenix City. They've played some good football games, opened the season against Pinson Valley, obviously, and then they just most recently on Thursday blew out Smith Station. Moving
Yeah.
on to, I'd say, what the number two is. I mean, you could go Auburn or Enterprise. We don't have our Power 8 out on 7A this week yet. But who do you think number two is? Would you give the edge to Auburn Enterprise, or do you think it's somebody else, TP?
Well, this will get figured out pretty soon.
Yeah,
But
because they
I
play each other.
personally, I'm about to say they play each other at the time of this recording this week. So, um, who do I think is the better team? No question. I think it's Auburn
Yeah,
because I think Auburn's just a really fine football team. And they got tested a little bit. They weren't as invincible. They drew a little blood against Opelika, but I think Opelika is a
absolutely.
mighty fine football team. They have a lot of seniors there. They got a great coach they got from Hartsville. So I think Auburn's number two. And honestly, you could make more of an argument for Thompson because you were at that game. They were a
Yeah,
2 point conversion away. They coached circles around Grayson, Georgia. It wasn't about coaching. It's just a bad night on offense.
yeah,
You know,
yeah.
that's a great football team in Grayson, Georgia with D1 players everywhere, probably some future NFL players more than likely. I mean, that was an incredible team, and they lost by 1 point. I was pretty impressed. I'd go for two. I'd go 2A Auburn and 2B Thompson.
Yeah, and we talk about that the way it is right now, but you got to think, power ranking wise, Thompson has a loss, Auburn doesn't, Enterprise doesn't. So in the power rankings, it's a little deceiving. So you'll see Thompson a little bit lower. Like during our last 7A, we had Carver Montgomery over them because we just thought that Carver Montgomery has won all of their football games. Thompson obviously has lost a game, even though it was by 1 point. But you got to remember, Thompson also beat a really good Lipscomb Academy team. Well, maybe not really good, but a good Lipscomb Academy team. And they avenged their loss for my senior year in 2022 in a game that we don't talk about ever on this podcast. Anyways, moving on the list a little bit more, I do want to bring up Carver Montgomery a little bit. I watched their game. We were on location, BamaPreps on location for their game against Vestavia Hills. And Bobby Carr, first year head coach, his first year in the AHSAA, picks up a win against Vestavia Hills. And I mean, what else is there to say about this Carver Montgomery team? So much talent. TJ Russell, really good quarterback, especially at the 7A level where you have to have that elite quarterback play. It's a non negotiable. They've got, Anthony Rogers, TK Norman. I mean, this is a team lined with athletes. I want to ask you, TP, what do you think realistically, this team's ceiling is? Do you think that they can be on the level of an Auburn or a Phoenix City? Do you think they can even beat teams like Opelika? Because Opelika is a good football team. And then you've got Dothan, Enterprise. Like they're in such a monstrous region. They're in 7A Region 2. Realistically, where do you see Carver Montgomery landing on that scale?
Well, you said it best. It's not a problem with talent. It's not even a problem with coaching. You've been
Yeah,
around that program. Great coaches from all
absolutely.
across the state. Former head coaches on that staff. Future Division 1 players. It's about that region, and it is basically like the SEC, where
It
you
is.
have teams like um, here are some of the teams that may not make the playoffs for reference. So in this region you have Central Phoenix City. We can agree they're probably going to make the playoffs.
Yeah.
Auburn and Enterprise. I think those three are going to be in the playoffs. Then you have a battle. You have a battle between Carver Montgomery, Opelika, and Dothan. Two of those teams are not going to make the playoffs. Two
That's
of them.
crazy,
Two of
right?
these, I'm about to say, two of these great programs, yeah, absolutely, are not going to make the playoffs. And I think not this week. Carver's going to beat Smith Station probably pretty soundly. Smith
Right.
Station Got a lot to do. Uh, I think next week though they go to Dothan. Now playing at Dothan's a hornet's nest. Now a lot of
Yes, it
people won't tell you that.
is.
That is
Yes, it is.
a hard place to play. You're facing a tough offense, a really smash mouth offense. We'll see how it goes. This could be a very interesting matchup. Will Carver get out physical? I think that's going to be a good question. Are they more flash than they are physicality? I think we'll have to see. I think that'll be a great matchup. I don't expect any problem between Carver and Smith Station. I think going to Dothan, I think we'll see if the Wolverines, if they get that win, they set themselves up really well because then they have a bye and then they host Enterprise. They got Enterprise at home.
That's it. Yep.
So I'm about to say, so, and
The
you get a
Crampton
bye.
Bowl. Yep.
You get them in the bowl. So, and Enterprise travels well. Don't get me wrong, but that'll be a great game. But I want to see how it feels because so far, Gustavia, good test. You were there. Last three, and the next game and the last three, Percy Julian, Jag, Smith Station. Let's be honest here, guys. Those are toss ups.
Yep.
Those are your, those are the games that you're supposed to win. So, I think this will be very fascinating. Not this week, but Dothan next week. I think we'll get to see if they can, and I think they will prevail against Dothan, and I think they will probably be a 4 seed in this region. And poor Region 4 is going to have to deal with it.
Yeah, that's right. Well, the new playoff bracket, and we'll get into that a little bit later, but it is something of interest, and I think every Thompson coach that I've spoken to has said that they either want to be the 1 or the 3 seed because they don't want to be the 2 seed having to face an Enterprise or an Auburn or a Carver Montgomery because it'll be the Region 3-2 against the Region 2-3. And it'd be a really tough playoff game for anybody. And yeah, here's what I'll say about this, Carver Dothan matchup that's, fastly approaching. You're right about Dothan. That is a smash mouth single wing offense with, their QB doing a little twirl and the double handoffs and in 7A,
Mhm. It's
you
five
see.
south. It's
That's
five south.
it's 5 South, absolutely. But they have a little bit more than the 3 plays that 5 runs. But, I think that Dothan, it's something to prepare for. And I've probably mentioned this on the pod before, but whenever we'd play, I played at Thompson. I'm sure everybody knows that. People call me Thompson Prep sometimes. But whenever we played Oak Mountain, when Oak Mountain had Chris Bell, it was very much a change of pace because you go from, defending 4 receiver sets, 3 receiver sets, teams actually being able to throw the ball, and now you've got to cover the A gap, the B gap, and the pitch. So you've got to go fullback, quarterback, pitch, and that's pretty much every play. And it is a huge change of pace. And that's something that Carver Montgomery has not seen yet. And you want to talk about Carver Montgomery's offense, like they spread the ball out. They have the receivers to do it. They have the quarterback to do it, and Dothan defends that well. So I think that style-wise, it's going to be a clash of like you said, flash versus pounding the rock. And I think that it's such a interesting matchup in that like. So we'll see. That's definitely going to be on our BamaPreps pick'ems that we do with CJ from Unlock Your Game, Larry, yourself and I, and Two Live Q, and we'll see how everybody picks that game. So I think Carver Montgomery's in such a interesting space, and I think that the potential for them is sky high. And I think that they can beat teams like Dothan. They can maybe even beat a team like Enterprise. But when you get to playing Phoenix City and Auburn, that's where we're really gonna see where they lie, in the pecking order. Because right now
Well,
they've got a lot of hype around them.
oh yeah, well, it's fascinating that you brought that up, and I think a lot of 7A teams are learning this about Robertsdale with the change of pace.
Pound the rock, baby.
Robertsdale played a great game against Foley. Robertsdale does not have the talent of Foley. They
Not at
never
all.
have, but they played an excellent football game. And maybe the Foley fans won't tell you that. I watched that game. They played really well for a team that didn't win a game in 2 years. They played phenomenal. And that's just from coaching right there. Chris Bell's an excellent coach. But with Carver, you have this schedule lines up a little weird. So they're at Dothan, like we just talked about. Then they play Enterprise. Enterprise, very talented team. I know in the past, as of last year, they run the wing T. And
Yeah.
I'm about to say, I'm sure they're running it this year. I'm not betting I'm not confirming that they are, but they've run it in the past couple of years. It wouldn't surprise me if they're running it again. Um, so that's another one of those offenses that is completely different. So you go from facing two extremely run heavy teams to going to Central Phoenix City,
Yeah.
which can do it
Yeah.
every they can do anything because they are excellent coached and they have a lot of talent and they are more very balanced. They're similar to college football. So and same with Auburn. Auburn can do whatever. They don't run these little things. And same with Opelika. So it kind of lines up weird. So you face Vestavia, who you watched, and they play three teams that aren't very good. No offense, guys. And then you play two just hard hitting teams. It'd be like if you played three like Sunbelt teams, not good Sunbelt teams. There are some good Sunbelt teams.
A
Then
bunch
you
of
play
Kennesaw
like
States.
if you played the Kennesaw States. Sorry, Vestavia. You guys are not in the Kennesaw State.
Yeah, yeah.
But Dothan Enterprise, it'd be like you play Army and Navy, and then you play Alabama and Georgia,
Yeah.
and then you face like Opelika would be like a
Like Ole Miss, maybe. I don't know.
yeah, that'd be like I don't know. It'd be like well, almost pretty good. It'd be like like a Texas A&M.
There you go.
Like
There you
something
go.
like that.
Yeah.
So
That's
it's
actually a
just
good
lined up.
comparison.
But it just lines up really weird, but very very excited to see how it plays out for the Wolverines.
Yeah, so moving down through 7A, we'll sort of speed things up a little bit, and we'll talk more about Hillcrest and some of these other games as we get into our, week roundup. But give me one 7A team that has surprised you so far, and give me one 7A team that has sort of disappointed you a little bit. We'll start with surprise. You give one, I give one, and then we'll do our disappointing teams.
Well, I'm gonna start off with the surprise Robertsdale.
There we go. Found the rock.
I talked about it a little bit. You know, they had lost well over 20 games in a row.
That's it.
They're making the jump up to 7A, which may be why they're doing a little bit better. But they played well against Foley. I'm not saying they're going to make the playoffs this year. Don't think that.
Yeah.
I think they're just going to be more competitive, and I've seen it so far. So, it's hard. They had lost 24 straight games, for reference. So that's not easy to get your guys to buy in, but they look a lot better.
You want to know how you win games, CP? You schedule a 2A.
Yeah, they did do that.
Unless you're Columbia, then you just don't win.
Well, fair. And then they beat 5A Alberta, okay, and they got Mary Montgomery this week. They're not gonna win against Mary Montgomery, but they got Fairhope. They might get Fairhope. They might get Davidson. They might get Alma Bryant.
They could, yeah. That's a very good matchup.
But besides, now that's just for Roberts Hill. A real 7A team that has really surprised me though in that region, the Baker Hornets.
There you go.
I'm about to say Baker has started 3-0. They beat Theodore, which a lot of people did not think they'd do, 33-23.
A good win.
And then they haven't given up a point since. They haven't given up a point in 2 weeks.
And you want to know who they play? You want to know who they play next?
They got Jackson.
That's it. That's going to be a good game.
But they're going to give up a point to Jackson. But you can only contain them for so long. But Baker has looked really good under their new coach, Jawan Johnson. He's done a really good job so far. Baker, a lot of you down there in Mobile knows, not the best football program. So they haven't been, but they got a little bit better in these last couple of years. They've got a lot better. And it was a little bit, they lost Bryce Kane to Auburn University. And and so a lot of people thought, how would they handle that? Including myself. I mean, this is a program that's won a whole one game in the playoffs. So,
yeah, and they lost, their star quarterback, Josh Flowers. When I got a chance to watch him last year, man, so dynamic. And I need to educate myself on what are who are Baker's playmakers this season. Not everybody left that program, and the DNA of that really good season they had last year is still there. And Juan Johnson, who's the former offensive coordinator at Hewitt Trustville, I got a chance to speak with him last season. He does a great job, and maybe they run something similar to Hewitt. And if you know anything about Hewitt, they've been running that same offense for ever since Josh Floyd got there. Very much a buck sweep, get outside the tackles, running game with, just your little cutting routes, your pro routes. They do a really good job of running. Of running to set up the pass. And, I think that this game against Jackson is going to be a very, very good test for them. And it's going to set them up well for region play. And, like you mentioned, Robertsdale, like the option, like the little split back veer that they do, the flex bone, any sort of option offense is the great equalizer in high school football because you can play just about anybody tight with it if you do it right. You have to sustain drives, you have to limit possessions of the other team, and you have to be able to put the ball in the end zone. And that's a tough thing to do. I'd say the folly of your sort of split back offenses that like when you get into passing situations it's tough, so you have to constantly be moving the football forward, and Chris Bell does that just about better than anybody in high school football. And look at where he's coached: Oak Mountain, Scottsboro, Robertsdale. Like these aren't traditionally state championship winning programs. Like he's gone places to where maybe other coaches didn't want to go, and he's really instilled you know structure into these teams, and like you see it with Robertsdale. And I think that they're going to be a team in a few years that may be on the level of Foley, maybe on the level of Baker, just because of the way that he runs that offense. So I agree. I think that Robertsdale is a great surprise this year, and it's something that we joke about a little bit. Every team has their little hashtag. Pound the rock. Whatever it may be. But realistically, I think that Robertsdale is a team that is trending up this season. And for me, I'd have to say my most surprising team so far is Prattville. Prattville went and beat Pike Road, Pike Road that made it to the 6A semifinals last season. And now they just, in a crazy game, they beat Pike Road. Now they just opened up region play and beat Oak Mountain. Say what you will about that, but I think Oak Mountain's a little better than what they were last year. I think that there's been a lot of negative energy around Oak Mountain, and I think
Hmm.
that their head coach from California has sort of pushed through all of that, and they've come out a good football team, and good quarterback Will Odell. They've got some weapons on that team. But Prattville start the season 3-0, and they're also in a tough region. But the more I watch them, and the more I see teams like Vestavia struggle, and Hillcrest Tuscaloosa struggle, I'd say, hey, there is a real outside chance here that Prattville could make it into the playoffs as that 4 seed.
No, I agree. I mean, I think that's well said. Prattville was going to be a team that they almost made the cut. I was going with either them or Baker. Prattville's really surprised us.
Yeah, absolutely.
They're running a great offense. I'll be honest with I mean me and Vlad will tell you right now. We thought it was going to be Prattville and Oak Mountain last two. We thought whoever would win against those two might get their first win of the season.
That's
They
right.
have definitely proved us wrong. I'm not afraid of saying that. They've played great. Shane McComb, he's battled a lot through Oak Mountain.
Yes,
I don't think a lot
yes.
of Oak. I'll be honest with y'all. I don't think a lot of Oak Mountain fans wanted him back, and I think there was a lot of turmoil there, and I think there was a lot of bad energy. Like you said, I think there was a lot of bad energy, and it wasn't good. But this year they're balling. They're playing really well. They look good. They and then versus Prattville was a great football game.
Yes, it
Like,
was. Yes, it
about to say
was.
Prattville got the win, but like Oak Mountain, they're probably not going to make it this year, but they're going to test some teams. They're going to test some of these teams that are in this region. I think they are much better than a lot of people, including myself, really thought they would have been. And maybe that's on me for not giving the proper research to the Eagles. So, and I know they returned a lot of starters, and shout out to them and that coaching staff. They've really put in the work, and they got my attention. And I think they're going to play with some teams this year.
Absolutely. Who do you have for 7A and disappointing wise?
Disappointing team in 7A. That is a good question. I think they've all kind of played out the way that I've thought they would, but the only
Yeah.
one that I will say, the only one, and this is just a little down thought to me is Hillcrest Tuscaloosa.
Yeah.
I thought they would dominate a little bit more. They've they're 2-1. So if you're a Patriots fan, don't think I think that y'all suck. I think y'all are really good. I just thought y'all would. I mean, the Hoover game at. I mean, they got blown out at home against Hoover. Now Hoover was coming off a loss to their rivals. Hoover was probably pretty angry. So
Yes. Very
I
angry.
can understand. I can understand that. Don't get it wrong. I understand that. I just thought, they played tight against Florence. The Sparkman game was closer than that score indicates, and Hoover was, they got beaten pretty soundly. Now, this is not the end of the world. You still have everyone left on your schedule. Your own one in the region, Big Whoop. You still have Vestavia,
That's
Hewitt,
it. Yep.
Tuscaloosa, Thompson, Prattville, Oak Mountain. You don't even have to win all those games to make the playoffs if you're Thompson. You can, I mean, if you're Hillcrest, you can lose to Thompson and still make the playoffs. A lot of people would expect that. You just have to. You need to beat Hewitt. You need to beat Vestavia, and you definitely need to beat Prattville or Oak Mountain. And I guess a more realistic disappointing one that I will say is actually disappointing me. Like Hillcrest has just been like, well, I get it. You're making the jump up to 7A. Vestavia's been a little bit more disappointing though.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. Well, here's the thing I'll say about Vestavia. You're not playing Homewood and Mountain Brook week 1 and 2 anymore. And, they went out and they wanted to schedule some teams that, would give them a challenge. And they've done just that. Like I said, I was at their game versus Carver. And by the way, Vestavia is my disappointing team. So, we'll sort of segue into this. They played Carver and, well, they got beat. They played Auburn and, well, they got beat. But I'll say this, they played a close game against Hewitt Trustville, and they were leading that game for a while. Obviously, game winning touchdown by Hewitt, and they go on to win it. And, what was so that's a game I gotta rewatch because that was really two really good 7A teams fighting. And while yes, they are 0-3, and they are a little disappointing now. It's gonna be no 10-win season for Vestavia, and it's going to be a little bit more challenging for Robert Evans and his group. I still think that they have a chance to make the playoffs, and I say that because look at the teams that they've scheduled. Look at the quality of opponent that they played. They have like a floor. You know how Florida has like the toughest strength of schedule in college football this year. That's sort of where I'm at with Vestavia. They have scheduled tough, and they've got another. I believe they have another big out of region game. Like I think they play Clay Chalkville as well. Correct me if I'm wrong there, but that's going to be, another tough game. There's no off weeks for this Vestavia team because every game matters now. Even your Oak Mountain game, even your Prattville game, like these games matter for Vestavia Hills because they have to have all they can get in order to fight for these playoffs. And while yes, that they're disappointing now, I think that, they're going to pick things up. The one that I'm probably a little more disappointed with is just the way that Hillcrest lost to Hoover. I know you mentioned it
yeah,
up. It
that
was,
that's probably the way that I should have phrased it. It was a little
yeah,
bit less competitive.
yeah, absolutely. That game was 35-6. That, there's not many takeaways from that. And I think that I don't know if it's that Stephen A. Smith quote where he's like, "We've been hoodwinked, bamboozled, led astray, run amok," whatever it may be. But I think that's, and we're starting to get a better picture of this, but I think that's sort of been the case with Hillcrest with, everybody. Look at who they played in their region last year. Look at who these teams were. It's Paul Bryant. That's Central High School. Like those are games like I don't know what their toughest region game was last year.
I
And
don't think they knew.
I don't think
Like,
they knew either. And give them credit for, making it as far as they did in the playoffs, but you saw what happened when they played a team like Saraland. It wasn't good. And that's been the story for the past few years with Hillcrest Tuscaloosa and under Jamie Mitchell. And I think everybody expected them to win the region games they're supposed to, but now, you know, I think that people aren't as high on Hillcrest. That's probably the best way that I can phrase it. People aren't as high as they were, maybe headed in to the Hoover game. And you saw it a little bit when they played Florence. What was the score? 32-20.
Yeah.
Um, so, that's a close game, and that's closer than 35-6. So, you know, props to those Region 4 teams for, scheduling actual 7A teams and not Albertville Junior every week. But yeah, I'd say Hillcrest Tuscaloosa a little more disappointing, but still early. We're heading into week 4 now, so we'll see. TP, we're gonna move on down to 6A now. As we mentioned, Saraland, Parker, Spain Park, Clay Chalkville, Oxford. I'd say that's your top five pretty soundly. But give me a team that surprised you a little bit in 6A this year.
And well, in 6A, I think
There's a lot of
I'd say
teams.
about say so I'm gonna go off the wall here a little bit. I'm gonna go out of the realm of probably a lot of people would think.
Throw it at me.
Uh, so there's a team called Russell County
There you
in
go.
Seal, Alabama.
There you go.
I've been to Seal, not a lot there, but it's a very nice school. It's a new school. If you're a Warrior fan, you guys have a very nice school. Maybe I've just missed the nightlife. But Russell County, the Warriors, they've started off 2-1. They lost a close game to Eufaula, who's a very proud program, but they've started off 1-0 in region play. They're 2-1 and in their so far this season. They beat Wetumpka,
Good
which
win.
a lot of people about to say a lot of people before the season, if you would have asked about 6A Region 2, you'd probably go Pike Road, Wetumpka, Stanhope Elmore, and then probably either
Percy Julian.
Rehoboth. I'd say Rehoboth or Percy Julian. That'd probably be the way that you go. I know that's which way I'd go. But Russell County has started off really well. I don't even know the last time that they've started 2-1. This is a program that's really struggled over the last year. For reference, they won 2 games last year. I mean, it's not been great for the Warriors lately, but
They're already there. Two
they have a
wins.
really good coach. Last time that they started 2-0 was in 2021. Granted, one of those wins was a forfeit win, but it was over Barber County, so I think
Oh,
they would have won
yeah,
anyway,
I'd
or
say
two and
so.
one. So they've started off really good though. I think they have a really good quarterback. His name is forgetting me. I know a lot of people on
Oh,
Twitter like him a lot.
hold on.
Uh,
Hold on. He mentions me on Twitter a lot. It seems like every time
he's
he posts,
a
I
very
hear
good
about it.
quarterback.
Hold
He's a
on.
very good.
I got it. I got it. Bryson Riggins. Okay, hold on.
That's him. He's very good.
Bryson quote QB1 Riggins on Twitter. Shout out that guy. But yeah,
He's good. He's good. He's throwing good balls against these good teams, and they got to go to the Crampton Bowl next week, and they got to play Percy Julian.
that's
And
gonna be a good game.
honestly, that could decide with Percy Julian beating Stanhope Elmore last week. That could decide who comes in second in the region. Realistically, either them or maybe Rehoboth. Rehoboth played Pike Road well, but I don't know. I think this could be a deciding factor for the Warriors. So
Well,
got to give them some love.
let's be yeah, absolutely, but let's be realistic here about Region Two. Where do we have Pike Road? They're 1-2 right now, and that win over Rehoboth wasn't exactly inspiring.
No, it
I'd
wasn't.
say that this is more of a toss up than many people think. I think that Russell County probably won't win that region. I'd look towards a team like Percy Julian, and obviously Pike Road's still there. But I think there's some nicks in the armor for that Pike Road team and Granger Shook. Region Two is going to be really really interesting last year, and I think that's a good surprising team. I'd have to go Central Tuscaloosa for mine. They picked up a huge inner city win against a Tuscaloosa County team who struggled, but I still think, from where they have been, I think that's still a
That's
good
a
two
good
county
pick.
team.
That's a very good pick there.
But you look at what Central Tuscaloosa has done. They're still in that region that Hillcrest was in last year, and they've got to play Bessemer City, who's also 3-0 next week. And Bessemer City has really overachieved this season, in my opinion. So I think that's going to be a big Region 4 decider. I think that Hueytown is still there, obviously, and they're going to figure their life out here pretty soon. But you know Central Tuscaloosa is a team that will make the playoffs this year. I think that Demario Pippin has done a great job with that program. They've gone back to those red helmets that they used to wear when, Pippin won the state title with them. They got a little mojo going. But I'd say Central Tuscaloosa is probably my most surprising team in 6A. But now, TP,
Well. You mentioned before we continue on. You mentioned he's done a really good job. Demario is his first year. Last year he went 5-5.
yep.
Last time before that season, that 2023 season, last time that Central Tuscaloosa had won 5 games was in 2015.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
he's doing something right. I mean that's a good football coach right there.
Absolutely. And when I get a chance to talk to him this off season, during spring, you might have some players that are missing, doing other sports, but their starting quarterback was still playing baseball at that point when I came and visited them. They're a program that has hit the weight room hard. They've got a good staff. And I think that Central Tuscaloosa is a team that has a real shot at winning that region. And this Bessemer City game is going to tell us a lot about them, heading into more region play. And really, really excited to see what they can do this year. Um, Tell us about, your more disappointing team in 6A now. Keep it
Well, I think you mentioned earlier, but I mean, do I
Pike
want to
Road.
go with Pike? I'm about to say, do I want to go with Pike Road? They lost to two 7A teams,
Seems like a
and
popular choice.
I'd say that would be, but I feel like that kind of walked the line on the Hillcrest, where it's just like you haven't been that disappointing. You know what
Yeah,
you know
yeah.
it's okay. Uh, Disappointing teams in 6A. I think I'd have to go a little bit. Let me go with Pell City. Now you
Okay,
maybe go,
yeah,
whoa, you're about
yep,
to say, whoa, they're not good. They're never good. Well, they won their first game. I think that got a lot of people's attention. You would think, oh, Pell City, these are kind of the guys that they were building towards last year. Whenever they were super competitive in their games,
yes. They
you
almost
know,
beat
they,
they
they,
almost beat Moody last year.
they almost beat a lot of teams. But they beat Pelham 35-7. I think that caught a lot of people's attention. You don't beat Pelham that bad.
Right.
You can beat Pelham, but and so then they had Coosa Christian, excuse me. They had Coosa Christian the next week, and
They
they lost
lost.
17-7. 17 to
Yep.
7 to a 2A team. The last time that a 2A team had beaten 6A team, it's been a long time. So that was like, oh wow. It's like maybe they are. And
Yeah.
then they got beaten fairly soundly by Clay Chalkville, and it's going to be another tough year for the Panthers. They may get another win against Huffman, which we have a lot of Huffman supporters now on BamaPreps. They're very passionate. If you're listening,
Absolutely.
Viking fans, I love y'all. You guys got a little bit more work to do. I hope and wish the world for you, but that might be the only region win that Pell City gets because here's the thing, Vlad.
They played some
They're
tough ones.
the only two. Yeah, they play some tough ones. So they got Mountain Brook. They got to go to Mountain Brook.
Oh
They got to
man.
host Huffman. They got to go to Oxford. They host Shades Valley, who looks a lot improved this year.
Yes, they do.
Then they're at Pinson Valley. They could win against Pinson Valley. And then their last two are out of region games. They play at Central Clay County. Good
Mm.
luck. And then they host Southside Gadsden, who's getting their stuff together. They're getting back on the right track. So
Right.
ah,
It's
I'd have to go
tough.
with Pell City. I thought after that win against Pelham, I thought this could be a maybe a contention for the 4 seed. Now I don't feel that way.
Yeah, yeah, I'd have to agree with you right there. For me, the more disappointing team has probably been Theodore. I think
Oh,
that,
good pick.
yeah, I think that Steve Mask, heading into his second year there with they're the Bobcats, right? Theodore?
Absolutely. Yep,
The
Theodore Bobcats.
how could I forget, right? This is the guy that went 7-4 last year. Lost 14-0 to Hueytown in the first round last year, which I mean, I know Larry doesn't like me saying this, but they don't play much offense outside of Saraland down there in 6A Region 1. But they lost to Baker week 1. Which I think surprised a lot of teams. And then, they start region play right away, on August 30th, week 2, and they lost to Spanish Fort in overtime. And I think people are saying, okay, I get it, close game. But then they just lost to McGill Tulin, and a McGill Tulin team that has been down for multiple years, multiple coaching changes. They lost that game 18-16. So they got to play Baldwin County next week. And I don't know if they win that game either because Baldwin County looks really much improved this season. And, they're sitting at, they're 0-3. I guess they're not as improved as I
But they
thought.
have been competitive. They have
Yeah,
been competitive. You're not
yeah,
wrong in that. They
yeah.
have been competitive outside the Spanish Fort game, but Spanish Fort's an excellent football team. So
Absolutely. So, I think that this needs to be a win for Theodore. I think you look at this game and say, like, you got to get on track. You got to win a region game because they got to play St. Paul's the week after that. And St. Paul's is a good football team this season. Then you've got, out of class game. You got to go play at 7A Fairhope, a game that they should probably win. And then you've got Murphy, Gulf Shores, Saraland, and Blunt, and you got to find a way to win two of those because you're already 0-2 in the region, and it's been a really tough start for Theodore this year, and a little disappointing, especially with a coach like Steve Mask there. But I think that maybe looking up for them, I think they will secure a playoff spot when it's all said and done. They've got to beat Murphy. They've got to find a way to beat Baldwin County, and they've got to beat Blunt. Because, even though Gulf Shores is 0-3, I wouldn't call it disappointing. Look at the teams they
probably
played.
the best 0-3 team in the state.
Absolutely.
Realistically.
They played, and oh God, I'm about to butcher this.
I got you.
Octawapachi.
Choctahatchee. Choctahatchee.
Was that it?
Choctahatchee.
There's a
Yeah,
what in there. There's a what in there, I
yeah,
promise you.
yeah. Choctahatchee. That is the way that we have pronounced it. Choctahatchee.
Okay. All right. I got you. And then they played Mary G, who they almost beat. 21-17 was the final. And then obviously Saraland in one of the muddiest games I've ever seen in my life. And they lost to Saraland 31-7. And all things considered, that's a pretty good score against Saraland. Especially with the way that Saraland has been beating region opponents over the past, 3 years. But I think that Gulf Shores is a team that's going to obviously figure their life out, and we project them to beat McGill, beat Blunt, probably beat St. Paul's, and then that Spanish Fort game on October 11th is going to be very interesting, and I think that we're not going to speak on Gulf Shores in the same vein that we're going to speak on Theodore. So that's probably it for 6A. We'll move down to Class 5A, and there's been a lot of interesting developments down here in 5A. I'd say your consensus number one. Oh, well, you know what? I wouldn't say consensus. I think
No.
there's three teams. There's three teams in 5A that you could say are number one right now. And this is excluding Moody, and that is strictly off of them losing the games that they did. Losing to Gainesville, losing to Oxford, but they picked up a good win last week. But I'd say Guntersville, Catholic Montgomery, and Central Clay County are your top three right now. And if I had to rank them, I'd probably go Catholic, Guntersville, and Central Clay. Um, where do you fall with that? How do you like if we had to do a BP Power 8 right now, like where do you put these top three? And does somebody else jump in there? Like where are you at with this TP?
Well, I do think um I think they got the right three. Honestly, I think the right three are there with Gunnersville Catholic and Central Clay. I would rearrange it a little bit. I think I'd go with Catholic one, Central two, a close second.
Yeah.
I'd close second. And then Gunnersville three. Now Gunnersville's very good. Gunnersville's great. They have a really good offense.
Yes.
I think it'll probably be them versus Moody in the North. And then I think those are those teams right there. But I think a team that is I think you would have to go with those three right there. And then Moody's 0-2, but they're or they were 0-2. They started off 0-2, but they played some mighty good football teams.
Yes, they
So
did. Yes, they did.
they played a lot of teams go 0-2 for those two teams. So and they played them well. So I think it'll probably be Moody versus Gunnersville in that 5A North semifinals if that's the way the bracket plays out,
Right.
and then in the 5A South, I really think it'll be Catholic versus Central Clay if that's the way the
Well,
bracket
tell me
plays out
this.
as well.
Tell me this. Central Clay last year they were a one seed, undefeated, and they lost to UMS
Yeah,
Wright. Obviously,
yeah. That's true. I mean,
well,
their
the
running back.
yes broke his leg.
Yeah, his name eclipses me. He's a dog. He is an animal. He broke his leg, and that's a problem for that type of offense that they run. They run a very run heavy offense. Danny Horn does so.
Absolutely.
Um,
Where
but
does tell me this? Tell me this. Where does Viger fall into
yeah,
all of this?
I'm happy you brought that up because
Because
they definitely deserve a seat at the table.
yes, they do.
They've really dominated. They handed LaFleur. I mean
Mm,
that I
quality
mean
win,
they
huh?
Well, they handed LaFleur their worst loss in program history, and LaFleur. I'm not saying they're changing hearts and minds, but LaFleur has been a program since 1966. They played a lot of football, good, bad, or ugly. They have played a lot of football. LaFleur has, so they gave them their worst loss in program history. I think Viger's going to have a nice test against UMS this week. I think UMS is a
Yes.
little bit better. I think some people looked at last year and thought they would be, it's just going to be them forever. No, UMS has got a great defense. They're always going to be well coached. I think it'll be a little bit more step up. I'm still taking Viger. I think Viger will win probably about 2 touchdowns. I think it'll be about 20-6 realistically. And Viger's really good. If we get if we get a matchup in the playoffs between Viger and Catholic Montgomery,
Oh man.
that would be one of the most incredible football games of the year.
And I hope that it's in Montgomery because I don't know if I can go all the way down the Mobile, TP.
Yeah, I would hope so too. I really would, but I would have to see which way the bracket plays. I know the South matchups already. I may be breaking some news here, but I do know the South matchups. It's Region 1 versus Region 3 and Region 2 versus Region 4. After that, I don't know which way the play out. But
Right. Yeah.
I do know those are the first round matchups, so that would favor. So that would mean that Catholic Montgomery would be lined up against the Central Clay region. We're only 3 weeks in. Why not talk about the play? It's
Absolutely.
already. I mean, no, who cares?
That's what
But
everybody wants to get to,
I
anyways.
think I'm about to say I think that would line up for. Uh, I think that would line up for a Catholic Montgomery if they were to play. I think they would play the Mobile school in the semifinal versus like a Central Clay. So I don't know. A lot has to happen. Central Clay could lose the rest of their games. Viger could lose the rest of their games and not even make it. So the way that's playing out, though, I think that'd be a great matchup though between those two.
Absolutely. Yeah. And where I'm at with Viger right now is I was pretty down on them this offseason. They lost head coach Marcus Cook, but then look who they hired. John McKenzie.
Yeah, just
Like
came back.
like this is a guy that won a state title with them in 4A, pretty handedly. They beat Aniana that year 52-14, and they really didn't have a close game other than St. Paul's. So you look at this, well, Faith Academy, but hey, what are you gonna do there? St. Paul's, beat Aniana, beat Jackson, beat Cherokee County, beat American Christian in those playoffs that year with, John McKenzie. He's a guy that left, went to, Paul Bryant and Murphy, didn't have much success, but now he's back. He's back to where he won a state title, and they've only let up 13 points so far this year. And they beat Tuscaloosa County handedly, 36-7. And like you said, UMS right, gonna be a big game for Viger, but I don't think they're a team that we need to forget about. And I know the Viger coaches and the Viger students and the Viger players have all been pretty mad at me lately. And let me just say this to you, if you're listening, and you haven't blocked me yet, Viger will be a threat this year, and they should absolutely be a team that needs to be considered. They've got a quarterback. Larry's pounding the table for this guy. They've got a quarterback and they've got a team that can compete with the best of them. But so does Catholic Montgomery. So does Central Clay. So does Gunnersville. So does Moody. Um, really even Leeds. So there are good teams in this 5A classification, and there are teams that can win football games and win state championships. You want to talk about a wide open class? You want to talk about 5A. Every team, every class has their front runners, but it's usually one or two. Very rarely do you see a classification that has 5 teams currently that could realistically win a state championship. There could be more. There could be more teams that we're not even talking about. I just mentioned Leeds, but Scottsboro is a good football team this year. Say what you want about Ramsey. They've struggled and probably going to be one of the teams that, disappointed us once we get there. But they're still a good team and they've still got a good quarterback. But outside of that, I think that we can get to your most disappointing teams, TP. Who do you have for
Well,
them in 5A?
did we do our most surprising teams?
I may be an idiot, TP. I might just be stupid. And I don't think we have. So give me that.
Now, I have a very easy, most surprising team. That'd be Williamson.
There you go.
Williamson's really impressed me. Now they played a team out of Florida, a team out of Mississippi, and they played a team, and then they played Alberta.
Doing a world tour.
Now, I'm about to say they're giving people the Lions World Tour.
Absolutely.
Now, granted, I'm not going to sit up here and say I know that much about the Florida and Mississippi team. I don't. But I do know this. They've put up 52 points, 44, and 49. They have allowed, in those 3 games, 6 points. You do that against any team, you got my attention. Williamson, the last couple of years, it's not been about their defense. They always played sound out defense. They've always been great on defense.
Absolutely.
It's been about the offense. Could they score? Could they score over 20 points? Could they score 3 touchdowns? Heck, sometimes they didn't even need to do that. They'd lose games 12-0. It was an offensive problem. They would lose. I mean, like last year, they lost 12-0 against Viger. They followed that up by losing 13-2. I mean, it's tough. I mean, it's not good. It wasn't good. But this year, I don't know what they did. I don't know if they hired a new OC. Maybe there's a Williamson fan.
Well, they got rid of Jamarcus Russell, so that might be what it was.
Well, yeah, they did do that.
I think Jamarcus got rid of himself. Let's say that.
I think Jamarcus stepped aside for reasons that I'm not going to talk about. But they've done something really well, and now this week they got to play Central now. Central's got a really good guy throwing that rock around. They're 3-0 too, and they've been pretty good. They had a close game against Milroy, which is a little head scratching, but they blew out Faith Academy last week, which I didn't expect. I thought they would win. I didn't expect that. So that should tell us a lot. If they can handle Central now, like they've handled the first 3 opponents, then they're a problem.
Yeah, absolutely.
Then they're a problem, and they're probably fighting for a playoff spot. I think Viger wins the region, but Williamson has the talent and has the. I mean, they obviously have the offense to play with Viger so far. We'll see how that. I'm about to say that we'll see how that holds up. But right now, it could be those 2 hosting playoff spots. We'll just have to see. But Williamson's been my most surprising team.
Absolutely, and I agree with you there. The joke that it's probably a very dull joke that it's been oversaid by me, and multiple things is the whole. Oh man, they don't play offense down there in Mobile. It's too humid to throw the football. But tell Saraland that. I guess Gulf Shores just kind of threw it to Ronnie Royal. But tell that to Saraland. And I think that Williamson's one of those teams that we don't really have a good scale of opponent just because they played a few out of staters. But then that Alberta win is pretty good, and this Citronelle game is going to tell us a lot about them moving forward. Most surprising for me, I have to give it to Catholic Montgomery. And maybe a little bit of a head scratching pick. You expect Catholic to be good, especially after what they did last season. But this is a team that's 3-0 now, and as I'm trying to pull them up, there's a lot of teams that start with the letter C. Let's see here.
They're towards the middle. There you are. I see them.
Yeah, there we go. All right, we got them. Catholic Montgomery, obviously, 15-0 last year. New quarterback, new playmakers, obviously new running back, but they beat St. James TP. I'm sure you can tell us all about that one, but they beat Eufaula.
I'd rather not.
they beat Eufaula, a good Eufaula team, 28-0, and this is a Catholic team that's gonna have to play Saraland here in a few weeks. And I think that I'm just surprised with how well they have transitioned up to 5A. And I think that I am really impressed with the way that they have won their games. This is a Catholic team. Go ahead, TP.
Well, sorry to cut you off, but what's even more impressive is enrollment-wise, Catholic's a 3A school.
Yeah.
They're only up here because of competitive balance. They've won too much. That's why they're up here, because they've won too many games. They're a 3A school. Most of their sports are in 3A.
Right.
So for them to be in 5A, and let's face it, kicking teams' butts in 5A.
Yes.
You got to see one that you glossed over, St. Clair County. You got to see them this summer.
Yeah, they were good.
They're improving. They're getting better. That's a much better team. Tyler Robinson's doing good with them.
Absolutely.
So to shut out Eufaula, by the way, at Eufaula, You got my respect right there. We'll see how they do against Catholic Pensacola, though. Pensacola Catholic.
Yeah, I got you. Yeah, it's gonna be it's gonna be obviously there's a good chance they win that region. I'd say outside of Eufaula, you look at who even who's in that region. Andalusia's down, Greenville's Greenville, Headland is gonna be a good team. Carroll is Carroll, and Charles Henderson obviously having a down year. I'd say Eufaula was probably gonna be our early pick, to compete in that region with Catholic Montgomery, and they just beat the brakes off of them. So we'll see, what the deal is in 4A. I think that, they're going to be a threat this year. They've got to go through Jackson, obviously, and some of the other, competitive 4A teams. But I think they have a real shot of going back to back. And that's not something that we were saying, 5 months ago, even.
Yeah.
Um, but moving on to our disappointing team in Class 5A TP, who do you got for us?
Disappointing team in 5A. Well, I think I'm not going to go with one that I think a lot of y'all would pick, and you know who I'm talking about.
Yes.
I think I'm going to have to go with, I'm going to go with two. I'm going to piggyback with two a little bit.
All right, there
I'm
it
going to go with
is.
Andalusia. Andalusia. Now, Andalusia's 1-2. They just beat Headland, who was ranked 10th.
Yeah.
The reason why I said they're a little disappointed, they lost to Hillcrest Evergreen, who's a 3A.
Yep.
And if you're Andalusia, you shouldn't be losing to Hillcrest Evergreen. And they lost. I don't know if that was just a rough game. I don't know what happened. Starting 1-2, a little disappointing. Andalusia, bar's very high, very proud program, great coach, and they're winning football games. So that one is a little disappointing. They kind of fall in that Hillcrest bucket where like you lost one that I thought you were going to lose, but the Hillcrest one is a little bit more surprising. But the one that's really surprised me though is Valley.
Yeah.
Valley hosted a playoff game last year. Valley's a very good program. It's hard for teams to go beat Valley. They're very talented teams that have gone through Valley. And they lost to Glenwood, who was in their first ever AHSAA game, who's also two classifications below them.
Shout out Glenwood.
Shout out to Glenwood. They're going to get some love here soon. And then they went on the road and beat Smith Station, but then they started region play against Central Clay, and it was a good opportunity. They went to Central Clay and they got shut out 48-0. Now Central Clay is going to be a great team, but so far it hasn't looked good. They got Maubrey this week. They might beat Maubrey, but this isn't a playoff team in my eyes.
Yeah, yeah, I agree.
And I'm about saying Valley is, Valley's been, they've been up and down these last couple of years, but they've historically been a little bit on the better side, but yeah, Valley's been disappointing this year. I thought they'd be vying for a playoff spot, but doesn't seem that way.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. And Valley in a few years here will be consolidating with another high school, to create a county school, which will be pretty good. They'll probably be a 6A. The name Chambers County is what they're going to be called. I did a uniform mock-up for them this offseason, and disappointing for me. I'm not gonna go Ramsey. I think that's the team you were thinking of. But I'm
Yeah.
gonna go Briarwood, another team in Region 5.
Oh, good pick.
Yeah,
Good
I
pick.
think that I thought that Briarwood this year would be, you always lose a few players, but I thought moving classifications and the team that they had last year, they beat Carver Montgomery last year in the 6A playoffs. But then they they somehow hosted Saraland, which I still don't know in round two that year. But I thought that this was a Briarwood team that can make some noise this year in a weakened 5A Region 5. But they've lost to Oak Mountain, they've lost to Homewood, and now they've lost to Ramsey. They're going to play Carver Birmingham at Carver Birmingham. That's going to be a tough game for them. But then you look at the rest of their schedule. Winnow is a good team. We know Leeds is a good team. Horner is 3-0 to start the year. John Carroll, Hayden, and McAdory. Matthew Forrester is going to have a tough task ahead of him for a Briarwood team that, I picked to make some noise in 5A this year, even being a 5A dark horse. And they haven't started well. I thought that they could beat Homewood, and I thought that they could honestly beat Oak Mountain. But like we mentioned earlier, Oak Mountain has become a much better team this year, and it's one of those we'll see cases with Briarwood. But moving into we didn't miss anything this time, did we? I think
No, we got them all.
I think Class 4A is the last class that we'll do our disappointing and surprising teams, and then we'll get more into sort of the big games from this past week, and then we'll finish up the podcast here. But Class 4A has been, well, how do I put this? A crapshoot. Um,
Yeah.
there's been a lot of teams losing, a lot of teams playing up in classifications earlier in the season that made a lot of teams lose. And I think that Jackson probably still stands above the rest. Their only loss was a tight win the Saraland, a game that honestly they could have won. Um, and we'll get into that game a little bit. But outside of that, Pleasant Grove, Cherokee County, Bibb County, who lost to Gordo. You've got West Morgan, Mobile Christian still there. We talked about Hanley and St. Michael. St. Michael, a team that with Gunnar Rivers at quarterback, they've got some really good receivers there, and a team that needs to be talked about. But there's just so many teams in 4A this year that have, been good and have also been a little disappointed to start the year. So tell us, TP, who do you have for your most surprising team in 4A?
Most surprising team, I'm gonna go with two a little bit.
Sure.
So I'll go with BT Washington. For
There you
those
go.
unaware, it is Booker T Washington around there, but it's just listed as BT Washington by most people. I'm gonna call it Booker T Washington. Booker T Washington. They lost their head coach. They lost Joe Phillips to Auburn University. They lost a lot of talent off that team. A lot of it to graduation. Some of them went to go play Division I football into other colleges. And they start off the year. They went to Eufaula, and we talked about a little bit there. Great
Yep.
football program. They won 18-10. They
There
won
you
on the
go.
road. Yeah, it's hard to win on the road in high school football. A lot of you know that. You guys played or are playing right now. It's hard to win on the road. It sucks playing on the road. So they won there, and then they beat Talladega, who they should win. They won by 20 points. They got a real test this week. They got to host Tallahassee,
Yep.
who's much improved under former coach Lawrence O'Neill, their former coach, who led them
How
to a
about
state
that, huh?
semifinal time. But yeah, funny how it falls into place. He's facing Lawrence O'Neill's facing his former DC and DeAndre Austin. And shout out to the Golden Eagles. They are ranked for the first time in program history this week. So good for them. And I'll go with another one that may be a little head scratching, kind of like your Catholic move. I'm going with West Morgan
There you go.
because they had graduated a lot. They really
Yes.
had. They had
Yes.
lost a lot. They went from the hunter to the hunted, and that can mess with a lot of teams. We see it every year. It can mess with some teams. They don't like being that in that role where everyone's giving you your best shot. Well, they've beaten everyone pretty badly. They've outscored their first three opponents 102-17, including a win over a very good Brooks team. They beat them 42-10. So that was a lot more lopsided than I think a lot of people would. So West Morgan has definitely been on the more surprising teams by how they've continued that success.
Wow, they beat Brooks, didn't they? Huh.
They did. And
Wow.
one more thing, I think it'd be a little hard. Pleasant Grove did have a player pass. It was announced today.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Wow.
Pleasant Grove did. I
I
don't
didn't
want to
know
mess
that.
up his name, but it is here. He was a junior. His last name was Kynes. I'm going to pronounce. I believe it is Linden. I'm messing that up. I'm so sorry. But uh, Mr. Kynes, he died in a traffic accident. Pleasant Grove fans, we are absolutely praying for you guys. Terrible, terrible, terrible. Hate to hear that.
Yeah, wow, I didn't know that.
About the Spartans. Praying for you guys. I know that's really tough. It sucked, on a more serious topic, to start off the season. We're always so excited for the season. We've had some hard things happen,
We
man.
have.
I mean, with the Morgan Academy quarterback tragically passing, and there's been a lot more. We've had games moved due to threats of violence. Uh, it's just been really tough so far, and this certainly is just another thing that's really, really hurt. So it sucks.
There's been a
And it,
lot
it
of
really hurt.
there's been a lot of tribulations to
It
start the
has.
year. And,
It has.
doing this kind of stuff, doing the podcast, it's something, my goodness, it's something that needs to, have a light shed on it. I believe a Tallahassee game has gotten canceled, Catholic Montgomery
Yeah.
game, um,
Had
tragic.
a game. I'm about to say had a game moved later date between Oakman and Carbon Hill
Yep,
because I believe they something was found or something along those lines. I don't want to give any false information because it was moved for a reason. The Catholic Eufaula game was moved to Saturday
that's it. Yeah.
because of also threats. So
And
it's
it's
been
like,
really tough. It's been really tough.
and it's like, what do you do? What do you do for that? Because that threat of violence, it doesn't really go away if like, do you have to play without fans? Like, is this just another COVID year? I know that Alabama didn't experience that as tough as some of your other states, but like, because Alabama had fans, but it was reduced. Like, I remember my sophomore year, we played Oxford High School, and like we had to be spread out on the sidelines because of the COVID scare that we had. And like, is that like, are we really about to play high school games like without fans because of all these threats of violence? And the Lochapoka game,
Oh yeah.
that game got, I don't know if it was moved or canceled, but there was a death
It,
there, and that they just decided to not play that one, and for good reason, really. And I think that you know. I don't know how often this has happened in the past, but it certainly seems to be more in the media now. Like last year, I don't remember a bunch of games getting moved because of this, and it's a really tough thing. Um, and is the answer more security? Is it something in the school? Because this kind of stuff is happening between schools, and it's not an answer that I can give right now. And it's something that has most definitely affected some of these lower classification games. But like, what's going to happen if there's a playoff game and this comes up? Like, you can't cancel a game. Surely can't cancel a game. It'll have to be played. So, it's something that's going to have to be addressed, just because of how prevalent it has been early this season. And there's been a lot of death, and it's never a good thing. Obviously, like you said, the player passing, quarterback passing. There's been players that have passed in different ways, and it's really tough. And all of that's really bad, but you have to also think like it's something that can rally a community, in the memory of those players, and it's something that can inspire a lot of, you know, it's something that can inspire your team to play well. And I think that, we'll see that all these communities move past these tragedies because there's nothing you can do except wake up, live another day, play another football game. The world moves, the world keeps moving. And at the end of it all, we'll see, how it affects these programs. But I do agree. It's something that probably needs to be talked about, TP, and it's tough. It really is, and I know that I'm underscoring it a billion right now, but it is tough. But we'll sort of change gears here. You gave BT Washington as one of yours. Who was your other one, TP?
it was West Morgan.
West Morgan, absolutely. And I'll stay in the north, and I'll go Westminster Christian. They lost last year. Their all world quarterback Brandon Mush, a kid who I believe is like started since an eighth grader there. Maybe they've got another eighth grader who they're just now working up there. But they beat East Limestone, they beat Plainview, and they beat St. John Paul II. And while the quality of opponent might not all be there, they've already won two region games. And I think that this is a Westminster team that looks good. I got a chance to watch them against Madison Academy last year. Obviously, MA did what they had to do, but Brandon Mush kept them in that football game, and they don't have Brandon Mush to keep them in football games this year. So I think that they've impressed me. I'll say that they've impressed me, and right now, being in the region that they're in, they've got to play Randolph. They've got to play Madison Academy now, who moves up. Um, so they're going to be in a tough spot, and they actually have to play Randolph this coming week. So we'll see how that game goes. But that's definitely one to watch out there for in 4A. All right, TP. Who disappointed you? Who has made you a not proud father? I guess a good way of describing it.
Wow, that's one way to talk about it.
I guess so.
Um,
Just kinda came off the dome right there, I can't lie to you.
yeah. Disappointing. It's while it's been a crapshoot, the teams that have been good, it's just been they've kind of fallen in the way that I thought they would kind of fall. But here's one, Wilson. Now, you
There you
may
go.
not have heard of Wilson, but Wilson struggled a lot these last couple of years. They're in Florence, and this year they're really struggling. They've lost a lot of games by a lot of points. I thought they would be a little bit more improved. They've gone 1-9 the last 4 years. And this may be even worse. Hopefully not. Still only 3 games in. Can definitely turn that program around, but I thought maybe this would be a team that could maybe win some games this year and that North. I mean, it's been 1-9 so many years in a row. You got to think maybe with the vacation, get maybe some easier games on there that they would come together. Doesn't seem that way. Still a lot of time. Still a lot of time. You could go 7-3. They could go, 12-3 for all I know. But
Right.
but so far it has not gone well for. What about you, Vlad?
Hold on, I think you cut out there for just a second. What'd you say?
I said, what about you, Vlad? What is your
No, before
disappointing
that
team?
before that, TP.
I said that. Um, I
Something about
said
Wilson, and what about you?
I said that, but so far it's been disappointing for Wilson. What about you?
I got you. For me, I'm probably gonna have to go Fultondale. They were a
Okay.
team that, made the playoffs last season, obviously lost in round one to Deschler, but that was a close game there for a little while. Start the season this year, beat Linden, but they've lost to Center Point and they just lost to Good Hope. And Good Hope is hold on, TP. I completely messed up my pick. Hold on. We're gonna cut this.
Yeah, just cut it
Um
out. Hey, you should pick Deschler.
yeah, how are they looking this year?
They're one and
Oh my
two, but
god,
they lost to
TP.
Hatton.
Nope, TP, I got my pick. You're gonna hate me.
Don't you pick St. James?
Picking St. James.
Crap.
I gotta
Go
talk.
ahead.
I gotta talk about them. I mean, it's a good pick in my opinion.
It is.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
TP. I'd say my pick probably would be St. James. I know that's your alma mater. I know you're gonna hate me for this one. But it hasn't been the best of starts for them. Obviously Aubrey Blackwell moving over, being his first season with the Trojans. And you just look at where St. James was with Jimmy Perry and even with Neil Posey for the 1 year that he was there, they could have very well won that playoff game against Mobile Christian last year and, moved on. But, I'd say it's been a tough start, a very tough start for them. And, as you've told me, they're revamping the playbook a little bit. But,
Yeah.
this is a team that, only beat Bullitt County 7-6. And they're gonna play Hanley next week and it's a football team. But just from where St. James was, they've lost KJ Jackson. They've lost a lot of playmakers on that offense. But I didn't expect them to start, the way that they did. They lost to Montgomery Academy 35-8, which is really tough. And Montgomery Academy, obviously a good team. They beat Tallahassee to open up the season. I'd probably have to go with St. James. They've been a team that I've gotten a chance to look in their program a little bit. Obviously, with you being from St. James, knowing some of the coaches there, it's been really rough to start the year for them. I think that this is a St. James team that's going to have to fight to get into the playoffs. They could play Hanley. They've got to play BT Washington. They got to play Tallahassee. Like they're going to have to find a way to win one of those games because if they don't, I think that they could be outside looking in or maybe grab a 4 seed. Um, where are you sort of at with St. James TP? I know that you have a good look into that program.
Well, and I mean, a lot of people around the program would tell you that this is going to be a tough year. They're in 4A because they were so successful the last 2 years, but even before the last 2 years, obviously 2 years ago won the state title. Last year, semifinals, very close, very closely to probably getting a maybe a repeat.
Yeah.
They under Jimmy Perry they had a lot of sustained success before Jimmy Perry retired. Um, it's just a really tough year. They're really young. There's a lot of people on that team that haven't made any starts, and they have a really tough schedule. Catholic Montgomery probably going to make a deep 5A state title run.
Yeah, as we mentioned.
Montgomery Academy probably going to do something similar in 3A. But Bullitt County, it's just a 7-6 win against Bullitt County. I think that shows that the program's not very good this year. They're just not very good, to
And it
put it bluntly.
happens. And it happens. Like
Yeah, it
these
happens. I
types of
mean, I
year
mean, I'm
happens.
about to say that happened. St. James, the last time they missed the playoffs was 2013.
Oh
So I
man,
mean, it
that's
was
when you were
bound.
playing TP. My goodness.
I was not playing then. I was playing. Man, I wasn't even in. I was in a sixth grader. I think I was playing
Oh
pee wee
geez.
ball.
My
But
goodness.
like, yeah. So like, it's been a long time. It's bound to happen. I personally, if you ask me, do I think they make the play? Say no. I don't think they do. I think Talisie's really good. I think Hanley's an excellent football team. I think Booker T. Washington's an excellent football team. I think Claiborne County is a lot better than what I think some people think.
Yeah.
And I think Mumford's going to be fine this year. I think they're going to be fighting for that fourth spot. So, I
And
think I think
it's really just like a perfect storm of crap to
yeah,
happen to you because you lose your top player and you get moved up into one of the tougher
yeah,
regions in 4A and it's going that way now. But we'll get to a lighter note, TP. I know we don't want to talk about the St. James Trojans forever, and we're going to talk about some of the games that happened this week. TP, with you being in Orlando, you idiot, why'd you move? I'm kidding. But that you weren't on location, but I was, and I got a chance to go down to Auburn to Duck Sanford Stadium, and I met the
yeah. How
mayor.
was that? How was your time at the Duck?
It was great. It was a great atmosphere. It was not an atmosphere that I have seen since I played football. Let me put it that way. I think the craziest game that I've ever been a part of is probably the 2021 Thompson Hoover playoff game where our student section just was you know how the Hoover Met has like that baseball like lining like the it's not fencing, it's like netting,
No, I know what you're talking about. Yeah,
that's the
yeah.
word, netting. And they play at the Met, which is awesome. It's a great venue. They've got good food in the press box. I found that out a few weeks ago. um
Mhm.
but that was probably in 2021 when we lost in the regular season and then we came back, we beat them in the playoffs. That was probably the craziest atmosphere until this Auburn Opelika game. When I tell you that Auburn's student section showed out, they were wearing all white. It was a wall of white, all the way up to the top row. And I ain't talking about Mountain Brook, all right? Not that type of wall of white. It was a white out. And um, Opelika also, like, these student sections were sitting like an hour and a half before the game. They were just hanging out, and I got a chance to talk with some of them, and they were, shouting, "Hey, BamaPreps, what's up, man?" Stuff like that. But that both student sections were great, but the game was awesome. Opelika fought hard, and it's you get some rivalry games that no matter what the records of the teams are, it's going to be a close game. You look at last year, with the way that Auburn won that game. It was a last second touchdown. And this season, it really didn't disappoint either. I think that Opelika is much improved under Brian Moore. Getting him from Hartselle, that was a process that was great for them, and he's going to do good things in Opelika. And we talked about Region 4. They're probably not going to make the playoffs this year. We talked about the teams that are in Region 4, and that's just based off of, who's there, right? With Carver being there, with Dothan being there, Enterprise, all of these teams. I say year one for them, making the playoffs would be a success. They're going to have to pull some games off, and I think that they can do it. But the way that they played Auburn this week was awesome. They answered with a touchdown. Auburn answered with an 80-yard bomb, and they were driving down the field with 2 minutes left. They've been running the rock. They decided to put the ball in the air, tipped by an Auburn defender, intercepted by the same Auburn defender, number 25. I should probably know his name. It's on our Instagram, when we did our on location coverage, and it was It was electric. It was absolutely electric. You can see the fans going crazy, the student section going crazy, and Opelika very well could have taken that game to overtime and won it. Um, I'd say that I'd say I hit the right game. Although there's another game we're gonna talk about that I
Well,
don't think
well, let,
anybody
let me
has.
ask let me ask you something, Mr. Vlad. You've played against a lot of these great Auburn teams in these last couple of years, and personally, this one so far has felt a little different. Do you think, with your eyes so far, is this one of the best Auburn teams you've seen?
No doubt. No doubt. There's talent everywhere on this team, and it goes all three levels. D line, linebacker, DB. You talk about they have a really good offensive line. They have a quarterback that can really play. Jackson Kilgore. He looked like Johnny Manziel a few times out there. I shit you not. He looked like the pocket collapsed. He'd run around a little bit in the backfield and he'd find a receiver. Like he's a guy that can do that. And then you want to talk about the talent on this offense. Peyton Plott. He does all the kick and punt returns, but he's also a damn fine receiver. You want to talk about Omar Mabson? You're going to say he's one of the best running backs in the state, and I believe it. He is a class of 2026 guy who's got offers from Alabama, Ole Miss, Auburn. He's got your SEC Power 5 offers, and I just don't think a lot of people are talking about him, and he's somebody who needs to be talked about because this is an Auburn team that can play Phoenix City. This is an Auburn team that just beat Opelika. This is an Auburn team that will probably beat Dothan, and a team that, obviously the Enterprise game, to play that next week. But this is an Auburn team that can win football games. And Lee said, is it one of the best I've seen? Yes, probably one of the best I've seen since 2020. And you want to talk about the craziest game I've ever been a part of? It would be the Thompson Auburn game in 2020. But I think that cow has been milked dry, content wise. Um, but yeah, I think that this is an Auburn team that will absolutely make a run this year, and it's one that I've warmed up to more and more and more as the season has progressed, and that game really proves it to me because they beat a damn fine Opelika football team. What are your takeaways from this TP?
Well, I think it proves two things. I think it proves um, that Auburn is going to be once again a contender. They are a very very good program. They have been. Last year they struggled with a lot of injuries. I was in that area. I got to speak with a lot of their coaches. They had a lot of injury problems. A lot of young guys starting. They're healthy, and those young guys that started last year have a year of experience against 7A competition. So I think that's really showing. Um, Now, I think it's going to boil down to a couple of things. Now, they got Enterprise this week. They got to go to Enterprise.
Yes, they do.
I'd about to say that's going to tell us a lot. Enterprise has Eric Winters, Auburn commit. They have Zion Grady, Ohio State commit. They have a lot of good players on that team.
Yes, they do.
I think it's going to be a very tough game. I think it'll be like last year whenever Auburn lost 17-14. I think it might be flipped around. I could see Auburn winning that game 17-14. I don't think it's going to be a blowout. I think it's going to be a tight football game, and I think it'll show. And I think that is perfectly fine. I think that'll be a good game. After that, they got Jag, and then they got Moody. I think that'll be a closer
Yeah,
game than people think. But
absolutely.
they got to go to Moody. But then after going to Moody, there's going to be all kinds of jacked up for that game. They got to go to Central Phoenix City,
Yep.
and
Yep.
I think it's kind of that Carver situation where you kind of have a hard kind of draw of where your schedule lined up because that's tough. That's really
Well,
tough to
here I'll
go
s-
on
I'll
the road
say
to Moody
this.
and then at
I'll,
Central.
I'll
Yeah.
say I'll say this about the Central team this year. I feel like it's easy to get excited about teams like Carver, like Vestavia last year. It's easy to get excited about Hillcrest Tuscaloosa. But when you win as frequently as Central and Thompson does, it's kind of like, yeah, they win, and you don't sit down and you don't appreciate just how good they have been. And I think that Phoenix City, like they beat these teams, like they beat good football teams by 20 or more. And it takes a team effort, and it takes a Phoenix City team, it takes a Thompson team being down one week in order to beat them. And I don't think that that's going to be as much of the case for Auburn this year because they're playing with confidence. Like they've already beaten a 7A team. They beaten other than Opelika, like they beat the brakes off of Vestavia. And say what you want about Vestavia this year, but I still think that they have an outside chance at the playoffs in a really tough region in their own regard. So when I measure Auburn this year, I'd say that they have closed the gap to Thompson and Central more than in previous years. I think that's the best way of putting it for me.
That makes sense. And we had talked about how Auburn has to face Moody the week before they play Central. Well, Central's got to play IMG Academy, so I
Yeah.
think it balances out pretty. I mean, it's
Yeah.
not the same, but I mean, it balances out well. But
That's
I
like
mean,
a hydrogen bomb versus a coughing baby. Like, I mean,
yeah, well, whenever you're facing IMG College, it's not the fairest of battles, but I'm rooting for y'all Red Devils. I mean,
absolutely.
I hope y'all beat the college out of Bradenton. So I personally have gotten to see that campus in person and gone around that. It is fairly impressive, I must say. They got a lot going on there. It's very
Oh,
cool, but
you've been down there?
I have.
Oh man,
That's about an hour. It's not that far of a drive for me. Well, it's an hour and some change away, and
I got you.
it's very nice. It's very nice. Very, it looks very much like a college,
I got you.
but Central impressed me a lot. They beat Lutheran North out of St. Louis, Missouri,
Yes, very
which
good one.
which I'm about to say which was a very good team in St. Louis. I know we're not the Missouri experts here, the
Not
Missouri
at
high
all.
school football, but they went like 11-2 last year, and they were a huge team that ran wing T. Their O line was bigger than Central's D line, and that's saying something because
Yes, it
Central has a
is.
huge D line. So that's what it looked like on the video, and they beat them 30-12.
Well,
So
let me tell you this about Central, and my dad told me this all the way back in 2018, when Thompson got blown up by Phoenix City in the state title game, 52-8. Um, not we're not gonna speak on that game. Anyways, what my dad told me about Phoenix City is that every single player on that team is 6'4", 250, from the quarterback to the D line to the O line, to the linebackers, to the DBs. And obviously, you got a little room for error in there. You know, that team had Javian Cohen and a few really big offensive linemen. But
they
that
did have JV and
but it
Cohen too.
is athlete after athlete after athlete. Their freshman team could probably beat Bullitt County. Um, and probably not probably, if you know what I mean. Like they would probably be Bullitt County because they've got another good
Right.
quarterback. You want to know who their quarterback is? It's their backup. It's Cam Coleman's little brother.
Oh, really?
And you're not gonna tell me that that guy isn't good. He is, and that also tells you how good Andrew Alford has been spinning it. So you know there's a bit of a gap there, but we'll move to probably the craziest game of the week. We've got two more games for you guys before we wind it down. Actually, three. I do want to talk about one more, but we need to talk about Mackenzie and Elba. Okay, listen. Let me say this, TP. I don't like cursing on the podcast. I like,
Okay.
having all audiences be able to listen.
Family friendly.
I don't like vulgarity on the podcast, but I have to say this. What the hell? I know that's not the craziest cuss word of all time, but what the hell happened? What happened in this game?
I'm
80,
happy. I'm happy that
80.
you brought it up. Yep.
80-78. Dude, what are we doing? We thought that the Good Hope Ohatchee game or whatever that school's called. We thought, it was like what, 76-71, whatever that final was. Like, okay, all right, guys. All right, let's chill out. Let's play a little defense. Nothing like let's sack the quarterback every once in a while. Let's have a TFL. No. No. Not an option. Not allowed. Can't do it. TP, Alvin Henderson, over what was it, over 400 or 500 rushing
It was
yards?
450 yards, and I saw today it was a correction. It was only 9 touchdowns. Guys, come
Oh
on.
my god, guys.
I'm
Still.
I'm happy I'm happy that you brought it up because someone, as you started talking about it, sent me the McKenzie stats from the game.
Yeah, there was
So,
that
so,
was a team
so
that won the game.
yeah, so I got to watch the end, and by the end I mean the fourth quarter, not the fourth overtime.
Right.
I got to watch the rest of it. Mackenzie, for those unaware, they played their first two games. They played two 3A teams. Granted, not the best 3A teams. They played Wilcox Central, beat them bad. Beat Prattville Christian, beat them bad. Then they went on the road and played Elba. And as I'm receiving this information, Quay Jackson, the quarterback, accounted for 9 total touchdowns, 6 passing for 345 yards. He also had 3 rushing touchdowns for 113 rushing yards.
Wow.
I watched that quarterback. He is really good. He is a mighty good quarterback. Any 1A team, we've seen the 1A football. They love the flex bone. They love the wing tee. They love the single wing. You ain't running that against Quay Jackson and McKenzie. They'll light you up.
Absolutely.
They are really good. Then they had Skylar Sander, who had 180 yards receiving with 4 touchdowns. And then they had another receiver named Jay Jackson who had a touchdown, and apparently he is committed to Troy. But apparently McKenzie got down 14-0 quick, but then they came back at half, and they were up 20-14. And at the start of the fourth quarter, if you guys can believe it, it was 34-20. It didn't stay that way.
No, it didn't.
It didn't stay that way. Eventually, we got to 80-78, highest scoring game in Alabama high school football. Funny enough, and 4 overtimes later, funny enough, that record had only stood for a year. And I don't think a lot of people know that. It was 2 1A teams again last year. And 2 very obscure ones. It was Central Hayneville versus Billingsley. And whenever the score came in, well, let me give you a little behind the scenes, a little behind baseball right here.
There you go.
Whenever the score came in, I surely thought it was a glitch. I thought it'd be closer to being 8-7 than the score that it was. The final score was 78-72.
Jesus.
And it was in 4 overtimes as well. I'm fairly confident in saying that. Yeah, it was in 4 overtimes. It is Central Hayneville versus Billingsley. And so before that, and this was in October, before that, Central Hayneville had only scored 34 points the whole entire season up to that point. So, and so everyone was just kind of confused. But that record only didn't even last a year, lasted 11 months. So, crazy football game. Alvin Henderson, saw he got a little dinged up. That's why he wasn't in there on the 2-point conversion play, or else they'd probably still be playing right now. So I hope he's okay. It seemed like he was okay from what he said after the game. But yeah, Mackenzie put themselves in a good position to win that region, but it's not going to be easy. They got to play Georgiana next, and they have to play Brantley, 2 mighty fine 1A programs.
Well, I'll say this, Mackenzie, maybe it takes one of those games to put yourself on the map, but they're definitely on the map. I know my good friend CJ from Unlock Your Game posted a tweet saying, he was like, I would love to know more about Mackenzie, but I can't find anybody on Twitter.
Yeah, there's not many people in that town. I mean, there
Mac-
really isn't.
the Mackenzie faithful social media presence. And let me not get this mistaken. Having a social media account does not mean you win state championships. But maybe maybe post it on Twitter. I don't know. Maybe something. But it was really crazy that because you had all of your normal scores rolling in. You're like, okay, this team won, this team lost, and then you look at that one, and you just go, what?
I
That's
don't even know. I don't even know if Mackenzie basketball put up 80 points last year in a game. Like,
no, they probably help because
I'm
there's
not saying
no.
I would have to doubt it. I mean,
We're gonna look that up actually because that is something of interest to me. But I think that this is something that we had to talk about. Um, but man, what? Hold on, let me pull up Mackenzie basketball here from last season. We gotta see what these
I gotta
boys were
see if
doing.
I'm about to say if you Tigers prove me wrong. Let's see.
We're using oh
Oh, they came close. Got 73 on Goshen.
Okay, they beat Slocum.
Oh no, they got it. No, they lost to Hillcrest.
Yep.
Uh
They played a lot of basketball. Okay, so they scored 73 against Op. They oh geez. Okay.
they did
No,
not.
they did not. So
They came close.
their football team scored more than their basketball team last season. Oh man.
Sh- Shout out to you Tigers that play
Oh
both
man.
football and basketball. So
Oh man. But
if you're listening.
do you think they have internet down there? That's mean. I
Oh
shouldn't
yeah.
say that. They have
You
internet,
can you can
obviously.
you can you can you can get rid of that.
But I'm keeping it in. Um let's change gears. And we mentioned this earlier. And we need to talk about this Hillcrest Hoover game in a little bit more depth. Um, Hillcrest Tuscaloosa, as we stated previously, they are a team that played in a very weak region, and they're a team that, consistently made deep playoff runs over the, last couple of years. And I don't think that needs to be understated. Like, we talk about their strength of region, but, they also played a lot of playoff games under Jamie Mitchell and even going back to Sam Adams. They've been in that region for since 2014, ever since everything got reshuffled with the introduction of 7A. And they just got blown out by Hoover. And, their win over Florence wasn't too inspiring. Their win over Spartan even wasn't too inspiring. But they got to play Vestavia Hills next week. Where do you have, do you think this is going to be a close game against Vestavia? Because they got to play Hewitt after that. They got to play Hueytown. And then later on in the season, they'll play Thompson. Like realistically, how do you see this shaking out for Jamie Mitchell's Patriots?
Well, I mean, if you would have asked me last week, I would say probably not a close game against Vestavia. But Vestavia played Hewitt exception. They should have won that game.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Hewitt didn't lead till like the last 30 seconds of the game. Granted, this is the most important 30 seconds of the game, but they didn't lead until the last 30 seconds of the game.
Right.
So, I mean, it's a pretty important game right there. Gotta win that. Gotta win that. I think it'll be closer than I thought it would have been if you would have asked me last week. But they gotta win that. I was more disappointed by the outcome of how lopsided it was. I was not disappointed that they lost. I was just disappointed that it wasn't a close game.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
thought it could be.
and that just tells you, Hoover got mad. Hoover Hoover got a little mad. I will say that,
They did.
this is something that we've mentioned with what does a team look like? We talk about loss in the community that you brought up earlier. And, they lost their head coach and they lost their defensive coordinator. And they've got some new people in new positions, like very close to the season. Like, I remember when all the news came out about Hoover losing head coach Drew Gilmer, like, it was like, okay, what's next? Because they play football in 3 weeks. They had to go down to Florida and play a really good Western high school football team. And their head coach is Chip English, who, I don't think has ever won a playoff game. And they've all proven me wrong. I'll say this about Hoover. The Spain Park game is very close to that Auburn Opelika game. I would not put too much weight into it. Um, that was almost Spain Park's Super Bowl in a way, that they hadn't beaten Hoover before that since the Obama administration. It was like 2014, 2015, the last time they beat them, and that was a very inspired Spain Park team. So don't put too much weight into that. But this was such a quality win, at Hillcrest Tuscaloosa, and they got to play Hewitt next week, and that's going to be another really good game. And if I had to pick one for on location, I'd say, why not? Why not go to Hewitt Trustville and look at this Hoover team again? Because they're gonna make some noise in 7A that, we weren't thinking, at the start of the year. Where are you at with this game, TP?
Well, I think Hoover's got a really good shot. They're
Absolutely.
a really good team. They, like you said, they've proven me wrong. I was really concerned to see how they would do this year. They lost Drew Gilmer. Whichever way you feel about that situation is fine. That it happened. He's not the coach. He resigned. But Chip English is the coach, and the players have rallied around Chip, and he's done really good. I mean, they lost by 2 points to Spain Park. That was a fantastic football game. You were at that game.
Absolutely. Yeah, that
So
was that was crazy. That was such a back and forth contest.
yeah,
And it proved both the resiliency of Hoover and Spain Park, because Hoover wouldn't go away either. They were down 27-12 in that game, and they stormed all the way back to take the lead. It just happened that quarterback Mac Beeson was just a little bit short on a scramble attempt. And who knows, if he gets a few more yards and grabs a first down, we could be talking about a 3-0 Hoover team playing a 3-0 Hewitt team. So, the narrative shifts a little bit, but it cannot be understated, just how impressive, Hoover has been to start the year outside of that loss to Spain Park.
no, yeah, I agree, and I think this game will be pretty close. I think it'll be a little bit closer than some people think. Hewitt blew out Hoover last year. I don't think that'll be the case. I think it'll be a 3 point ball game.
Yeah.
If you
Yeah,
had to ask me,
absolutely.
I think it'll be a tight football game. I think this could realistically determine who hosts a playoff spot.
It does. Yeah, it
Uh,
does.
that's it.
Absolutely.
Let's say it's pretty important. Are you hosting? Who are you hosting? Or are you going down to Mobile due to the new way?
Yeah.
That's a big difference. I mean, think about it. That's a long drive.
It is. Absolutely. And I
That
don't
is
think that's
not
the
saying it's not a fun drive. I mean, I'm sure you know about it. I mean,
uh
it's. Let's say it isn't that fun. I'll get into another day. I'll get into another one day. I'll talk about the longest road trips I've ever seen recently. Like I've seen Aniston go play at Williamson before.
Jesus. I know that
Like
Baker had to come up and play Mountain Brook last year, and that
yeah, that's a
was
long drive. I remember one time. Here's one. Um, it was Lamar County versus Providence Christian back
oh
in
man.
2018. Uh, for those unaware, Lamar County is in the northwest Alabama. It's in a town called Vernon.
There you go.
And I mean, it's really north. It has no business being in the, let me put this in quotes, south of Alabama. And they had to play at Providence Christian, which is in Dothan.
Oh
And it was,
man.
I believe,
It's like a
if memory
5 hour
serves me
drive,
correct,
isn't it?
it was about, I think it was 5 hours and 3 minutes. And for reference of how long of a drive you could do that with, the same length, it'd actually be shorter for you to go from Montgomery, Alabama to Columbia, South Carolina.
Oh my God.
It'd be a quicker drive to go catch a South Carolina football game than it would be to go from Vernon to Dothan. But nevertheless, big deal.
Yeah.
I think Hoover's gonna get that 3 point win, but I think it'll be very tight.
Oh wow, you think Hoover beats Hewitt?
I'm going that way. They
All
impressed
right.
me a lot last week.
Absolutely. I'm right there with you. And for our final game of the pod, we need to talk about, Hewitt and Vestavia a little bit. I know we've mentioned them in a few different segments, but at the end of the day, I think this proves that Vestavia is still a good team, and not one that needs to be overlooked. You talk about the loss to Carver, the loss to Auburn. I think that those two teams are maybe on a step above Hewitt this year. As we were saying that about Carver, but I just think it's the truth. And Robert Evans said that, hey, every week's going to be a dogfight. And God, what was it? We got a bunch of fight caps and whatever playing playing against the guys that they're going to be watching in a few years. Um, but it really is the case, and they got to go play Hillcrest next week. I think that this just shows me I'm not going to be down on Hewitt after this game. I still think that Hewitt's going to be a very good team, but I think that this just shows that Vestavia, even though they've lost some games, like they're going to keep fighting throughout the year, and that's an important thing. I remember Coach Moore saying with his Opelika team, it's important to not get too high and not get too low. And I think that has to be said for Vestavia this year. They can't get too low. They need to understand that the teams that they lost to are very good football teams, and that there's a lot of season left, and that there's still a chance that this is a Vestavia team that gets better, makes the playoffs, goes to Mobile, wins a game, and then, we're talking about them in the same vein that we have been for the past couple of years under Robert Evans. Where are you at with Vestavia this year and sort of, their growth throughout the year?
I think Vestavia is going to be. I think they're in a tough region.
Yes,
Obviously,
they
that's
are.
not. Let's say it's not the most surprising news of the day. Uh, they this could be building towards next year.
Yeah,
You
they're a
know,
young team.
they're young. They're young. They graduate a lot. Obviously, they graduate a lot. You kid that went to Tennessee. Last name is Ross. Can't remember his first name. Is
Jordan
it Jordan?
Ross. Jordan
Jordan
Ross.
Ross. Okay, Jordan Ross. It's hard to replace a kid like that. This could be a building year. May not be the prettiest on the record. That's okay. Robert Evans knows what he's doing. So I think give it a year. Next year, I don't think they'll have to pick up a game because I know that they don't do the same kickoff classic twice.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
they won't be playing Carver next year. I don't know who they'll play. But it probably won't be Carver. They could. I could be terribly wrong. They may just want to go see the scenery of Montgomery. But
All that scenery, huh?
yeah, but no, I think they'll be much better next year. I think this year, growing pain is how I'd put
Yes.
it for the Rebels.
And they're going through it early. And it's funny you mentioned that Carver game. When I spoke to Evans before the game, he said that when we scheduled the kickoff classic, Bobby Carr wasn't the head coach, and they didn't have the player that they didn't have Anthony Rogers. So he was looking at that game and saying, this might be one that we can win. And then everything happened, and Carver Montgomery is obviously, as we stated earlier in the pod, going to be a good team this year. And it was one that, you have to sort of switch your preparation for. And it was really an unknown entity. Heading into the year, there wasn't film on that Carver team. It was a different offense. It was a few different players. Because you got to remember, they also took about 10 players from Lanier. And you combine the talent, like the top end talent of Lanier and what Carver already had, then you bring in a player like Anthony Rogers and you bring in a coach like Bobby Carr, and it's easy to get excited for. And Vestavia, I just don't think they were ready for that speed. Auburn, we've talked about Auburn and the team that they have been. They beat Vestavia 52-17. That just shows you how good Auburn is this year. And then this Hewitt team, coming down to earth a little bit more. With that being a region game, with there being so much animosity between these two teams, especially last season with how Hewitt ran um, Vestavia out of the building last year with Peyton Floyd. I remember he had like 5 touchdowns, 200 rushing yards. I think Vestavia was really, chomping at the bit to play that one again, and they barely lost. So I think this is a Hillcrest team that they've got to play next. And let me say this, I'm going to make this a projection. I think that Vestavia will beat Hillcrest um, in week 4. What do you think about that?
You think Vestavia is going to beat Hillcrest?
Yes, I do. And we'll have that in our Power 8. This will probably come out around the same time as that. I'm sorry, as our preseason predictions. Preseason predictions. What the heck are you saying, Vlad? I'm sorry, we're weekly pick'ems. Goodness, I've changed gears there a little bit. And I think that this is a Vestavia team that will beat Hillcrest. Are you surprised by that a little bit?
Um, I think it'll be close. I
Yeah,
think it'll be closer than what I would have thought a week ago. But I'm okay with that. I'm
yeah,
gonna pick. I'm gonna stick with Hillcrest because I think you see some teams that get punched in the mouth and they
y-
come back and they fight and they play really well.
yeah,
So
absolutely.
I think
Um,
Vestavia showed me that they're a little bit better than I thought, but I still think Hillcrest is just a little bit better.
I gotcha. I gotcha. Well, we'll have to see. And that's going to do it for our podcast this week. We appreciate everybody listening. It's been a while. Hopefully, this will have some good reception. Feel free to leave feedback in the comment section. We're going to be cutting up a few of the clips that, some of the stuff that we said, and we'll be posting it on Instagram and on Twitter. And it'll be some of the hot takes. It'll be sort of like your Vestavia Hillcrest and that kind of stuff. But looking forward to week 4. I think officially it's week 5. But we've got some good games. We've got some good games this week. Around the state. Like even Daphne Foley, who are going to play this week. I think that's going to be a very interesting game. And as you sort of go down the classifications, obviously Vestavia, Hillcrest, and there's a lot of good games, and we'll have our weekly pick'ems out, and that'll cover some of them. But I just want to say thank you so much for listening. We're gonna be back in the swing of things, and we always, I love recording these types of podcasts, and really just growing the game more in high school football. I think when I set out to create BamaPreps, I wanted to change the way that high school football was covered, and I think that we're doing that. And I appreciate you, TP, for helping me out. And, I think you're going to be a great co host. And, cheers to many more, BP pods.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me on, and I hope if you're listening, I hope you've enjoyed the podcast.
Yep, absolutely. All right, now I'm going to have some crazy outro music. And that's it. We're done.